Alright, what is up everybody? This is Mordenakis, and today we are going to be going through a crash course in how to record vocals and what goes into it. This is mostly because I am working with a client at the moment, and they are new to this, and so I figured I'd toss them together a video, and whilst I'm here, let's make it public. Why not? So, there are a few things that go into recording vocals, but it is generally one of the simplest things to record. You pretty much just need a microphone, an interface, and someone who's a good vocalist. That's all you need to record good vocals. There's a few different things that are important when it comes to understanding how microphones work, and I have not enough slack on that cable. The first important thing about microphones is that there are different types of microphones for demo purposes, right? This is my Lewitt 440, great on guitars and snares and stuff, not a vocal mic, doesn't matter for this example, right? Now, the way that microphones work is a little outside the scope of this, but you can essentially imagine the microphones as kind of having a little eyeball in here, and that means they can see, right? They can see a certain area. The vast majority of microphones are cardioid microphones, or supercardioid, and pretty much every microphone that you come across, if you don't know what it is, it's generally pretty safe to assume that it is a directional microphone, because that is the vast majority of microphones you find in the wild, especially vocal microphones. So, the idea of a cardioid, which is a fancy way of saying heart-shaped vocal pattern, is that everything in front of the microphone here is going to be picked up really nicely and clearly by the microphone, right? And that kind of makes sense from looking at it, right? Like the capsules here, it's pointing that way, it's going to be picking up everything that it's looking at, so to speak. Over to the sides, it's going to be picking up less, and over at the back, it's not really going to be picking up anything at all. Now, a word of note. The reason it's not picking up stuff at the back is because of these portholes. So these portholes, what they do is they let sound come in from the back and phase cancel with what's coming in from the front, so you don't get anything back here. So if you cover these up, like if you hold the microphone like this, you are turning it into an Omni mic, right? That is not going to sound good. I mean, maybe it'll sound good, but it will change the pickup pattern of the microphone. So that is something to bear in mind. Now then, the other things that are relevant to recording vocals is where you are standing and the distance between you and the microphone. There's also where the microphone is pointing at your face that can go into it. The other thing is always use a pop filter. I know I'm being mildly hypocritical saying this because I'm not currently recording into one, but if I pick up the phone and show you, right, I'm over here, the microphone is over here that's picking me up, and this microphone is, first of all, it's not angled directly at me, so even if I say something with a lot of plosives like P, Q, B, it's not going to overload the capsule because there is sufficient distance between my voice and the microphone capsule. If I got all the way up here, which I, should probably ride the gain a bit because otherwise this will start clipping a bit, but if I now start saying things like P and B and that sort of thing, you can really tell on the recording it's actually clipped a bit because of that. That is why pop filters exist. Let's talk about directionality and what else to look out for. And to do that, I'm actually going to get up, and I'm going to be using this microphone for this because this is just a little bit easier to show. This microphone here, which you're now going to be hearing in the audio recording, by the way, this microphone here is it's a Shure PG58, and I just picked it up as a kind of, walk around and talk with this thing kind of mic. And the neat thing about this is it's a great example of showing distance. Now, if I keep talking at the same volume and I pull this thing further and further back, what you'll notice is that the signal level of the mic decreases, which is not ideal. But the other thing you'll notice is that my voice has a lot more low end to it, right? This is the phenomenon called proximity effect. The closer that your microphone capsule is to your source with a cardioid microphone, the more bottom end it's going to pick up, which works nicely on some voices. It does not work nicely with other voices. Keep it in mind. Now, the next thing that you'll want to bear in mind is if you are being loud, you need less gain on your microphones. If you're being quiet, you need more gain on the microphones. This is something called gain staging. It's something you get better at with experience. Where you point this at the face is going to matter, right? So if I point it at my mouth, you're going to get a different sound to if this is pointing at my nose, to if this is pointing down at my mouth, to if this is kind of pointing up here. There's not really a good way to know ahead of time exactly how these things are going to sound, but the general rule is that the more head-on it is to the source, the more volume, but volume doesn't really matter because it's the studio, we have faders. But the other thing is that the more you turn it this way, the more off-axis you are, the more low end will be in the signal. So generally, if you want more clarity, point the microphone like this. Distance to the source matters. If I put it all the way up here, it's going to sound very different to if I have it all the way over here. Another thing to bear in mind is that if you are working with a handheld microphone, which some people will say never use handhelds in the studio, as far as I'm concerned, whatever gets the best performance is what you should use in the studio, right? If the vocalist is going to give you a better take holding the microphone, let him hold the microphone. Just be careful. Do not do this. Handheld microphones, perfectly fine. Just keep your fucking hands off the capsule. It's really that simple. Now, another thing, mics that you're holding in your hand is handling noise, right? That sort of thing, where if you stomp around, you might be able to hear it through the microphone. Be aware of that sort of thing. And if you hear it in the vocal, then you gotta give another take, or you gotta punch in that line. Now, on to the final bit of this, which is gonna be how you gain stage the damn things. We're gonna start recording, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna hop over to here, and now let's take a look at this. Now, these are only clipping because I have kind of been, smacking and abusing these mics, but they shouldn't be clipping. More importantly, they should not be clipping on the interface. I've got here an Audient ID44. Those little red lights, or those little green lights, rather, on the channel, those are what is telling you that you have signal, right? If I start doing this, you can kind of hear it in the recording. You see how the red light is flashing? That red light should not be flashing. That red light is the clip indicator for the preamp. Now, there are two places that you can have stuff clip. If stuff clips in the DAW, that's not great, but depending on how intelligent your DAW was written and coded, it might not be as big of a deal. You can just pull down the fader and the clipping won't necessarily persist. On the other hand, if you clip the signal on the preamp on the way in when it hits the analog to digital converters, then you've just sheared the top of the waveform off and there's nothing you can really do other than re-record. There are ways to avoid clipping on the preamp, and the simplest one is just to gain stage shit properly. The way you want to think about doing this, and what we're going to do is we're just going to dial up the gain on the preamp so that this thing gets a little bit louder, right? And the whole point of this is you kind of want to be peaking around minus 12 decibels. Depending on what you are recording, and now you can notice this is a lot better dialed in. Now, what you'll notice is that with certain instruments, you will gain stage them differently. The general idea is to have the signal with digital. You want to have it loud enough that you can work with it, but not so loud that it's going to be clipping. And you'll notice that peaked because I got a little bit loud. And part of the reason for that is because, again, vocals are a lot more dynamic than other instruments, right? When recording something like a guitar cab, it is not uncommon for me to dial in the gain staging so that the peaks are hitting at minus 6 decibels on the fader. This is fine, because guitars, especially heavily distorted ones, are not that dynamic. However, vocals have an incredible range of volume. I mean, I can go from this all the way to this, 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 and you'll notice I'm pulling the mic back because I don't want to clip the signal. And this is fiddly when it comes to gain staging sometimes, because you will want to try and have most of your signal living at a decent volume. So what do? You know, I mean, do you have one microphone that is going to capture all the quiet parts that are, you know, all the soft, intimate parts with the acoustic guitars, and then another microphone for when your vocalist gets all shouty? I mean, you can do that, but generally you want the loudest parts of the signal to still have that 6 to 12 decibels of headroom. And what that sometimes means is that you might do an initial vocal pass where you kind of get the vocal take, and then maybe you'll go back in and do some extra takes where it was quiet. It could depend on the session, but yeah, that's gain staging in a nutshell. It's not nearly as complicated as people make it out to be, but it's still important. That's pretty much everything as far as vocals are concerned. It's pretty much just get microphone, add pop filter, dial in the gain staging, leave enough headroom. It is surprisingly simple, and that's all there really is to it. Let me know if you found this sort of thing helpful. I mean, obviously the person who I'm recording this specifically for is going to find this helpful, but equally, if anyone else sees this and thinks, whoa, that was really helpful, then, do let me know. I can do a similar style of video for other things that I have recorded, like guitars or bass or drums. I mean, I'm not that good at recording drums, and I haven't got a real drum kit here, but I can certainly share my knowledge. And, catch you all in the next one. Mordenakus out.